Okay, so now I have my image up. Sorry for any audio quality problems. So one of my friends asked me for a boob shading tutorial. So I'm going to do one really, really fast to just show you guys. I have my flats, I have my lines, I make a clipping mask above it, and I just use my shortcut to make everything, whatever, CSP. But this works for Photoshop, this works for most digital art programs. A lot of the basic principles even work for traditional, but I'm basically going to be using a hard brush, a soft brush, and a blending tool, which exist across CSP, Photoshop, Corel, all the big programs. I think Procreate as well, but I'm not familiar with Procreate. So first you want to determine your light source. In the original version of this image, I did a top-down, because I really like top-down lighting lately. I think it's really sexy. But I'm gonna do a side lighting this time, so I'm just gonna draw a little sun. But it's overhead. It's overhead, so the sun is far away. It's not spotlighting. Next, I'm gonna select our skin tone there. Usually, I just manually pick colors until I find something I like. And these brushes have no blending. All the brushes I'm using have no blending or very little blending to them. Because I know Photoshop brushes don't auto blend the same way CSP brushes do. But what I'll do is I'll just lay down some gen shadows. Let's pretend she's still in the water, like in the other picture. So I'll lay down some general shadows. I know that's not her boobs. But you wanna, when you're shading any part of the human body, and I'm not a professional by any means. I know there's a lot of things I'm failing to capture in this image as well, for lack of a better term. But when you're drawing the human body, you want to account for the underlying musculature, because there's a lot of implicit form. When I'm shading her, and I know this isn't her breast, but when I'm shading her arm here, there's the bicep here. Even if Y'shtola is a mage and she doesn't, I mean, you can draw her with them, but even if she doesn't have defined biceps, you need to understand that her armpit attaches here. I don't know the names of any of the I know the names of very, very few muscles and body parts. I'm not a science guy, nor am I so versed in anatomy that I just know these things on principle. But I know there's muscles here, and understanding that there's muscles there will really help you with shading, especially with really strong lighting. If the light was way closer, then even her less defined musculature would be really visible. But I drew her with the very typically sexy gravure body, which generally has a bit more body fat, and bodies that have more body fat are going to have less defined musculature. So if I was drawing Smain, who also has a pretty big chest, I would draw him with more defined musculature, because his chest is big because he has very developed pectoral muscles, not necessarily because he has a lot of breast fat. This is a tutorial for if a character has a lot of breast fat. It's just the shading technique, right? But you need to understand the underlying anatomy. God, I hope my audio is recording properly. I've definitely recorded tutorials before and then not. So I'll pick a darker color, and then the areas in shadow. So there needs to be higher contrast generally. Of course, again, with different lighting, this varies. I'm just going fast and loose with this, but you have your base skin tone. You have it right here. And then you have the shadows. So look at the shadows versus the base skin tone. That's a bit of a big difference, but there's less of a leap between the shading color for the shadowed part. So I would almost say this, hold on. This, and then this part. Those are all pools of light almost. You want to see them that way, where there's strong lighting. If there's a general lighting, if you're doing an overcast, it's a little different. But when you're doing a slightly stronger lighting like this, then you'll get pools of light. Maybe the whole body is a pool of light. When you're doing it, on this Y'shtola picture, the pool of light is obviously her shoulders, her nose, and then the top of her breasts. Let me. Or with Minfilia here, the pools of light it's really like there's not really a pool of light here. Like even though obviously the lighting is coming in on her hair and her like arm and stuff, I wouldn't consider that a pool of light. That's like almost rim lighting. That's not like a pool of light. Like the shading on here is much closer to how I would do it on an overcast. It's just if I wanted to add the rim lighting and make the general colors a little bit more dramatic because that amplifies the piece. But like with Minfilia, this is how I'd probably color like a general, like a sunlight, even if the lighting wasn't coming in from the side. Anyways, so so like the breast fat, it hangs off the chest, right? And it's attached with muscles, like with more muscular characters, like maybe like a Monbrita or a Thancred. And you have to like I don't like being like male and female because obviously you have like Svein, he's trans, but he has a body that's pretty close to a cis man, despite whatever terminology. But like you have to think about like the amount of musculature and then the amount of breast fat, right? So like Lys or Monbrita or Thancred, they're characters who I draw with high breast fat and high musculature. So you have to like account for that. Y'shtola and Minfilia and your general like sexy girl character. And like I hate saying it like that because everyone has their own preferences, but like your general like gravure idol types, like that kind of like modelly, like thick anime girl, that kind of thing. They'll usually be like less musculature, more breast fat. Like again, if she had more musculature, I'd probably define her collarbone a little bit more. I'd probably define the muscles down here where her like torso is a little bit more, around her armpits a little more, but you don't have to do that here. So I get the general shading. I want to shade under her, like where the skin interacts with the bikini, because it's just like it's a little tight, so it would create a bit of an like that skin dentation. So again, I'm using like a let me show you this brush. It's like a it's just, you can see it. It says coloring brush. It's just a Photoshop brush. And it's like a little bit soft. And then sometimes I'll use like an airbrush, like a kind of harder airbrush like this. And I use the blending tool in CSP sometimes, which is just like that. Like it doesn't lay down color. So I use this is also a Photoshop brush, but it's a little bit harder. So, it's a little bit harder edge. And then this is a CSP brush, but it works pretty much like a Photoshop brush. It just doesn't lay down as much color. So I use these brushes. So basically I just use Photoshop brushes. Like the hard round, but softened out a little bit. God, what brush was I using? Right. So, sorry, my shortcuts. So you have cast shadow, which is this, like on her, on most of the shadowed part right now is cast shadow, because that's like shadow from, like her chest and, just like different parts of her body, like covering up, her other parts of her body. And then you have like form shadows, which you have here on the arm is a good example, or like here on her breast. I guess I should be like talking about her boobs. I'm just talking about like general shading now. So form shadow, it just defines the form. Like as her body like moves away from the light, because these are all rounded forms, her arms, her breasts, her torso, etc. As it, even like here, like on her armpit, like as these move away from the light, there's like less visible light. And then you want to add, like, some people do this like later on, and I know I'm like using the term like very loosely here. Every fucking 3D artist is gonna kill me when I say this, but you want to add some ambient occlusion. Ambient occlusion is just like when like the area light can't reach. Now some people stylize ambient occlusion away. Using ambient occlusion will make your work more realistic, but a lot of like painting and anime art and stuff stylizes it off to create like a sort of heightened reality. So it just has to do with your preference. In like sexy pictures, I prefer a bit of realism because it makes things feel weighty. Like when I draw, like a picture like this, I want it to feel weighty. I want you to like think about like what it would feel like to touch her. So So I'm just going to soften out the shadow because I like to think because it's the sun rather than like a lamp. Like you have to think about how far or close your light source is. The farther your light source is, the softer all the shadows are going to be. And obviously the shadows cast by her head are going to be a little bit harder. The ones cast by her top are going to be a little bit harder because, you know, they're cast shadows. Maybe I'm gonna make it a little bit. So I have this layer set to multiply the lines. This is my line layer. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make them like a light brown, but so all of them are like a light brown now. I like to generally keep, or a dark brown. I like to keep it like a general dark color that fits the mood of the piece. But I'm gonna make the shadow on her, like I'm gonna make the line, I'm gonna use like a light orange on her like cleavage shadow and on like certain parts of her body. And I know this might be a little redundant, but I'm gonna go back and paint over these parts of her body later, probably, because when it's like a really soft part of the body, I like to use like lots of different layers just because it lets me, like, say I didn't like that, I can just, you know, and I just merge them like as I go, you know, just as I feel like it. See, I want to define that cast shadow a little bit more and then smooth it out at the ends. I like to keep a little bit of texture, like I don't want to over blend, like I don't want to like merge these and then like blend everything out. Because like, yeah, that looks soft, but I like a little bit of texture. It both creates kind of the illusion of skin, and I think it makes the work look more painterly. It's just up to your preference. I think if you blend it out more and then you use like a skin texture brush over top it, it looks really realistic, but that's almost like too realistic for me. Like it gets, for me personally, it's uncanny with her like anime face. Like if I drew her more with a more realistic face, I might do that. Again, it's all up to personal preference. So I'm gonna focus a little bit on where her clothes interact with her body. And of course, like this, again, it varies on the outfit that she's wearing. Like this is really tight. I'm gonna switch over to my airbrush. I'm gonna use like a wider airbrush. I'm gonna pick like a nice like dark red and I'm gonna airbrush very lightly. I'm gonna airbrush her skin tone there. I'm gonna soften everything out. That makes it look like the top is like really tight on her chest, which is what I want it to look like because I want it to look like it's filling it out, right? This pixel's killing me. There we go. Oh, I did end up blending everything. Oops. Look at me focusing on the armpit when I'm supposed to be teaching how to shape boobs. But you can make the shadow darker. That creates a more dramatic effect. I like to keep everything like soft, because I like I like people being able to like think about what they feel like. With this kind of sexy artwork. Like, if I was drawing like a normal illustration of Y'shtola, even if she had like her cleavage out, if it wasn't like in her like her Shadowbringer's dress, I think that one has cleavage. I wouldn't put so much into making like there be like a soft realism to her chest. Like, it would almost feel crass to do that in like, say, like an action-y piece or something. Because, you know, you have to think about what focus you're going for in your piece. Now, I think one really cool, like, stylization trend that I used to be really fond of, and I still kind of am, in, like, anime is where they'll, like, add the highlight on the cleavage, and it really, like, defines the forms. I really like it. I like using it in more stylized pieces. If I want to add a bit of sex appeal in, like a non-sex focused piece, so not a piece like this, and I really blended it out here to give it that like natural realistic look, even though this kind of lighting is really unrealistic. You can define it more depending on how stylized your work is. Like, I draw with fairly realistic proportions, so this kind of thing, even if it can look okay, I don't necessarily always like to use it, but I'm going to for the sake of this tutorial. See it even though the light the highlight realistically would not be there, it's just a fun way to stylize. You'll see me use it sometimes in my work. Where's my eraser tool? There it is. Oops. Yeah, I should have just done that on a different layer. So you have this like really soft line. I'll just make a new layer above my line layer. I know I don't have any of my layers labeled. And I'll use it to sort of like blend the shadow like just a little bit. Like just to add some definition back. And it makes a world of a difference, I think, personally. Like, even if I turn off the lines, they look pretty good. So let's get some reflective lighting from the water. Because it depends on what you're doing, but, like here, like, the water would have its own light. And how, like, you can see it here on her, like, skin. I did the reflective lighting really unrealistically and dramatically. Actually, I'm not sure with water, because I'm not really familiar with working with water. Like, I don't draw it a lot. But I like to play up the reflective lighting a little bit dramatically. I was intending for this to be like a 2-minute tutorial. So so this is the watercolor. I'll take a lighter version of it. Like, lighter than her skin, you want to do. I'll just blend that out. And I'll do it on low light, like low opacity, just whatever looks good. I don't like that because I don't think that it would. I'll do it on the rest of her skin. Hold on, I'll like do it here. Because I don't think new layer, and then I just start adding it in manually. I know this is probably like a really like counterintuitive way to paint, but it works for me and it's therapeutic and fun. I'll define her forms, like her rib cage would be here, so I would define that part. I would have the highlights rest on her rib cage here. Her abdominals, you know, I have to like think about it. Like when I add the when I add it on like her arm, I have to account for like her like the inner part of the elbow. I have to account for that, etc., right? So that's that. And then sometimes your skin gives reflective lighting too. It just looks good sometimes. I like to use like a really saturated version of whatever a lighter and saturated version of whatever the skin tone is. Maybe like here. Again, it's unrealistic, so you know, use it with caution. A lot of people like to stylize, like if you ever see like in anime art and stuff, like the stylization like this, that usually comes from like really over dramatized like reflective light. And then last but certainly not least is highlights. So you can do like a really broad highlight with just and that doesn't create the illusion of wetness necessarily. Oh, sometimes I like to add like a shadow above the breast here, depending on what the lighting is like. Like it doesn't work for this specific image because the lighting is coming from above, but if the lighting is like a general lighting, then I like to shadow on where the fat starts to hang off the rib cage or the muscles, like the base muscles. I don't know what those ones are called. I'm gonna make this a little bit lighter because I don't like that. I'm gonna do a little bit of overpainting. Overpainting is really important to me, like painting over the lines. Anyways, so you can do like a really soft highlight like that. I'm gonna keep that. And just for like sunlight, sometimes I really like the like really shiny highlights. It's very like hentai manga coloring. It's very unrealistic. It makes her look like all oiled. I guess she's wet here, so it's fine. I like to do it in like a few little spots and then just like slowly blend it out. I press Alt to select the colors, but I think like most people who do digital art like know that. I like to do a few little dots because it's like a stylized version. Because skin is textured as little dots because of our pores. Like if you look really, and our like hair, our like where the hair comes out, like the hole the hair comes out in your body. So skin texture, like if you look at like those like Photoshop skin texture brushes or skin texture brushes for painting, it's all like pores. So I like to make them like circular because it's just like a really stylized, dramatized version of. And that's how I color breasts. I hope this is helpful to anybody who sees it. Of course, if I was doing this for more than a tutorial, I would probably spend a lot more time rendering it. You can see over in the actual picture of Y'shtola, I'm going to be spending quite a bit of time just like rendering this out. The Minfilia one isn't done either, but this is like how I put it down, and then after that I just go in and I add tweaks until I think it looks good. So that's it. Thank you. Bye bye.